Welcome to Three Thoughts On. This is Rafael Andrade, and today we continue with the addiction series. My guest is Matthew Taub. Matthew is a certified recovery coach, personal trainer, loving family man, and author. His journey from addiction to a life of purpose has not only shaped his narrative, but also inspired many on their own recovery path. He has helped individuals overcome alcohol use disorder and addiction, all while achieving lasting sobriety. With 17 plus years of personal sobriety under his belt, Matthew brings a unique blend of empathy, understanding, support, recovery tools, and first-hand knowledge to his coaching practice. As a personal trainer, he promotes holistic well-being, endorsing physical fitness as vital to recovery. He believes nurturing both body and mind create a stronger foundation. I met Matt through common friends, and I loved the conversation we had. He is indeed a wealth of knowledge and inspiration. I hope you enjoy this conversation as well. And now, Matthew Taub. Welcome to Three Thoughts On. Today we have a new guest on the series of addiction, Matt Taub. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for making the time to be part of this. As we discussed, we have some beautiful common friends that have put us together to have this conversation. So I'm very much looking forward to what you have to share. Obviously, they speak very highly of you, and I can't wait to get started. But why don't we lead the audience with, tell us a little bit about you and how did you get to this point in your life?
Absolutely, I'd love to share that. So my story goes back. We'll start from just 18 years ago. So I'm 18 years in recovery. My escape of choice was alcohol. I was by the last, I'd say, year of my drinking career, I call it, I was drinking from about 7 in the morning all day long. I think I would be referred to as a functioning alcoholic, and that drinking would ramp up as the day went on, to the point where I was a blackout drinker pretty much every single night. And that took a toll on, obviously, my business, my marriage. We had a 1.5-year-old almost. And I came back from a night of drinking, told the nanny she could leave. I was home alone. I woke up about, God knows, 3-4 hours later, passed out on the kitchen floor with my wife staring down at me. And all I could think of at that moment was, oh my God, and a whole bunch of expletives in my mind. Not that my wife was staring down at me. That was bad enough as is. But I remembered as I woke up that I gave my son a bath. And I didn't remember putting him to bed. So that feeling has never left me. Ran to the bathroom. Thank God the bathtub was empty and there was nobody in it. And then went to his room and saw that my son was there. And that was it. That was my personal rock bottom of having that feeling. I ended up going to rehab on my own. And from there, once I went to rehab, very much like our friend Hillary, I didn't tell anybody that I was sober. I just wouldn't drink. But, I white-knuckled it a little bit. I went to therapy. I did the program for rehab. But for 10 years, I didn't tell a soul. Being in the fitness industry, I would always say, well, I don't drink. Look at what I do for a living. I want to be healthy. It's my body. And I never really talked about it. And then at my 10th anniversary, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post about my addiction and recovery. And, I remember my wife saying, are you sure you want to send that to the publisher? Because once they do it, it's out there. And I'm like, yes, to get it out there. And it was amazing what happened at that point in time. All the people who came out and told me their story. And then I kept it quiet. And I would talk about it, but nothing like I would talk about until the last, I say, 3 years, where I really just wanted to help as many people as possible. Being a personal trainer, especially, that was a huge, huge thing for me. And then during the pandemic, I decided, you know what? I've got the time, and I was helping people, but I only helped them based on what I knew. And I wanted to know more. So I ended up going and getting certified as a recovery and sobriety coach. And I've been doing that along with fitness ever since.
Wonderful story. Thank you for sharing. There's a number of things that I took notes there as you were talking, and I kind of wanted to throw a couple of things at you and see if you can comment on them. You mentioned
sure.
you were pretty much drinking all the time. Do you remember? Do you remember the first time you had a drink, and was it for you one of those moments where that was it? It was a very first sip, and that got you started, or was it through a different type of process?
Do I remember the very first drink I had? Yeah, I was 13, and I was at synagogue, and I was given. They had a little club they would go to, and they'd have a drink in the morning. 10:30 on a Saturday morning, and they poured me half an ounce of rye. And I actually recounted this story with my oldest son as he went to university. And I took a shot, finished a half ounce, and I can tell you that feeling to this day, I feel it going down my throat. I felt warm. I liked it, And I said to my son when he went to university, and he's like, oh my God, we drank rye and whiskey last night. I said, well, what did you think of it? He goes, oh, it burned. It was gross. And I said, that's the difference. I said, when I first had that, I really liked it. I liked how it made me feel. I didn't start drinking then and, go hardcore. University picked up, and I started to drink more. And that became the transition. But going back in hindsight, knowing at the age of 13 that I really liked how that felt in me, I knew that alcohol would make me feel a certain way.
Yeah, and I think that that's so important. I follow you on social media. The reason why I ask is because we still to this day have people who do not understand the disease aspect of alcoholism
Right.
and other types of drugs, right? But specifically in alcoholism. And the way that I try to explain it, based on what I've read, because I have never had an issue with alcohol, and I'm thankful for that. And just it doesn't react in my body the way it does in other bodies, right? So the way that I try to explain it to people, at least the way I understand it, is for certain people, it creates a reaction, and then that reaction leads to the craving of more, and it is a chemical reaction, right? Analogous to you having an allergic reaction to cheese, or you have some other reaction to some other type of food. Alcohol creates in some people this reaction that leads to a dependence. So people say, well, I saw your post on social media about Matthew Perry, right? And I was going down the responses, and there was inevitably someone said, well, it's a choice, he did this to himself, et cetera, et cetera. And it fascinates me that we still are having that discussion today, that people do not understand that certain body types, certain genetic makeups react differently to that particular toxic substance. And and for some, like when I was interviewing Hillary, she said it was like day one, she had this reaction, this awe, right? This, wow, oh my God, what did I just have? So that's why I was asking you to see if you had a similar type of reaction. Yours was a little bit different.
Very similar. I had it young, and then as I got older, I had I recounted stories. It really was. It was like, oh my God, like why didn't I not know this earlier? Like, oh my God, this is amazing. And yeah, when people look at the choice, and on that post I did, there were close to 1,000 comments, and I'll tell you, I gathered about 100 of them and started posting some of them here and there. And you have a choice. Who told you to pick up that first drink? In a society where it's the only thing that if you go to an event and you don't drink, the pressure about why you don't is so big. That's why people drink. That's why they have the first one. It's the societal pressure and the norm that we have all this. But I joke around. How come no one does that with chopped liver?
Yeah, or dessert for that matter, right? With sugar, of course, is another substance, highly processed sugar. Of course, I mean, highly toxic, highly inflammatory, very similar detrimental things that happen to the body when we consume it, and very similar dependence that occurs in the body, but you don't get the similar type of pressure. You get some pressure if you don't eat sweets, but nowhere near what you get with the pressure of alcohol. So
yeah,
part of the reason why I'm doing this is to create that awareness that there is a difference in how each individual body processes ethanol, which is the main molecule in alcohol. First of all, it's highly toxic. There is zero benefit. The data just keeps piling up. There are no benefits. And depending on your makeup, it will create a dependence very early on. And it sounds like, this is analogous to what you've experienced, not only of yourself, but I'm assuming that as you're coaching people, you're seeing the same type of things.
Yeah. And again, whether it's just at a young age or an older age, what I'm seeing is that people who need that escape, who go to this escape level, not that they need it, but they try it, where it's like, oh my goodness. And you even see it with people in general, just knowing what it does. They call it liquid courage. I'm about to go dance on the dance floor and do karaoke. I need 5 shots, right? It's that liquid courage to get it done, where it takes all the inhibitions away. You're taking away a lot more than just your inhibition.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I actually used to use that term a lot. That's why I'm laughing, liquid courage. Let me ask you, you mentioned the rock bottom, right? So that's, dark night of the soul. There's different terms, for that moment. And as you start climbing yourself or pulling yourself out of that hole, if you will, how did you go about dealing with the anxiety? Did you find other things to put your attention into? I mean, of course, you had the program, and the program has the steps, and of course, the program works well, but you still have to have the disposition to follow it, right? So in talking to different people that I'm meeting, it seems like everyone has the one thing that they were able to focus on to hang on to not go back to the drinking. Was that the same with you?
Yeah. So when I did my program, I did a bit of the steps. I didn't do all the steps. I found a program that worked best for me in an inpatient program. And because addicts don't do anything easy, I got permission to live out of the inpatient program. So I was working at the same time, training clients, going to the rehab, and then coming home. Going back to work, then going home. But what I use and what I use with my clients now when I deal with them is, my secret was, and I truly believe this, is if you know your why, if I know my why as to why I was drinking, why I was escaping, what I was escaping from, that is the first step for knowing why I won't do it again. If I know why I drank, and it wasn't to get drunk, what was I escaping from? Why did I need an escape? Once I figured that out, then that was my ammunition to go, okay, I know what that is. Now I need to figure out how to handle that, right? Understanding that, and there was a lot of things I did. I did EMDR, which is a very important key tool I give to a lot of people. The other one is understanding that, and this is a big one. It took me a while to get through this one. Every memory we have, the reason we can recall them so quickly is their memories, is that they're just electrons in our brain. That's it. Everything that happened in the past, I can't fix anymore, but I can fix me in the present. So knowing why I drank to get away from this over here allows me to know why I won't go forward, because this over here happened. I can't change it, but I can change my reactions going forward. So my big thing was know why, and I'll know why not.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned, tools, having your why, knowing what you're escaping from, EMDR, memories. As you put these tools together, do you find, in your journey, you said, 18 years, do you find yourself taking out and adding from that bag of tools?
Yeah, all the time. So EMDR, if people aren't familiar with it, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Essentially, taking what your trauma was or whatever you needed to move past. And I'm giving you the really quick Reader's Digest, great version of this that I put together. Is you take it, you acknowledge it, you see it, it's there. We can't take it away, but we can acknowledge it. We don't have to, befriend it. Just acknowledge that it happened, stick it into a drawer, close the drawer, and you can revisit that drawer anytime you want. And I recommend open the drawer. It's still there. Okay, I can handle it there. But it's not forefront, or it's not living in the back. It's not like, when you walk into a messy, your office and your desk is messy and you just can't handle it. I've cleaned it all up. You stick it in there. So that tool is great. And I actually go there a lot where if I'm having a moment and I still react the same way, if something is bothering me or I'm getting triggered by something, and that could be anything from my kids upsetting me, right, to, something catastrophic in the world that I might upset me. I close my eyes, big deep breath in, and just allow what's happening to be processed. And that's all it is, the processing. And then I put it in that drawer and I'm good to go. Knowing why again. So part of that why is kind of, I know why I drank. I know the triggers that are associated with it. And I know why I don't want to. Because my why to know why I don't want to for anything that comes forward. It's not always the trauma of the past. I use drinking as a way to escape. In general, I know how that movie ends. And I do that a lot where I say to my clients, we've seen this movie on repeat over and over and over again. I don't like how it ends. The ending got boring for me. I need a new ending, right? There are times where I have had to deal with things that I deal with differently. We talked about the sugar before. One of the things I highlight with my clients and just anybody who reaches out to me, I just wrote a book a little while ago, and it's one of the tools in the book, is if you're getting off with alcohol, make sure you get some sugar candies. Because one of the urges you're going to have when you're having these moments is not just the alcohol, it's the sugars in the alcohol. So we used to have a business, my wife and I, where there was a candy and nut store 3 doors down. And I'd go in there and buy a whole bunch of nuts and cashews and this and that. And they'd be, Matt's having a good day. He's eating nuts. I could go in 4 days later and spend $20 on candy. And they're like, Matt's not doing so good today. And it's funny, they didn't know that I was drinking, but that I'd quit drinking. They knew if things were bad, I came in for sugar. Because that was my connection. My kids laugh today. Still to this day, I have a cabinet. I keep having to move it because they take my candy. But my oldest one says, he goes, Dad, it's so funny. Most adults have a liquor cabinet, and you have a licorice cabinet. and I use it for that, that sweet, that sugary craving. That urge is still there. Not to drink. I've actually transferred it into candy. When I'm having a bad day, it's grab my candy.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's exactly where I was going next, because that seems to be a theme, like with our common friend, Charlie, he mentions that he runs, right? And of course we know how much he runs, and he's been running, the planet, for a few decades now. So you mentioned, you personal training. Do you see, like him, a connection in physical exertion and caring for your body 100%. In a physical way? Tell me how that works for you, and how do you promote that to the people you talk to?
Start off really simple, because you don't want to have a transfer. They call it a transfer of addiction. Listen, if you're an addict, you're putting some good amount of time into recreational drinking or recreational use of something. That's a lot of open time. So we're going to have to transfer that to somewhere, whether that's, cooking or, running marathons across deserts, right? Exercise is a huge release because it gets you, one, out of the house if you're going to the gym, right? If you're going to the gym, it gets you out of the house. It gets you around other people, and community is the biggest part, right? One of the things about addiction is that it's not about just the substance. Addiction is also a lack of connection, right? That's why people do it alone. If I'm with a whole bunch of people, I don't feel the need to go running to get a drink, or I didn't back then, right? Until it became, my need was always at the bar. Therefore, my friends became the bar. What you want to do is, if you're getting into fitness, you have that connection. If going to the gym is too much of a challenge, again, we don't want to put up barriers. We don't want to cause stress. Grab a pair of shoes, go for a run, go for a walk, get out, do some push-ups. The endorphins you build up in your body while you're exercising, we know are amazing for you. I've added other tools to it, especially people early in sobriety. Once they've gotten past a certain goalpost in sobriety, I'm a big believer in cold plunging. Right, that's part of it as well. Part of that fitness level of recovery, right? Exercise, cold plunging or cold showers, and then eating right. Those are the three that I recommend to everybody who's getting into fitness after sobriety.
So it's basically a process of reframing, right? It's basically teaching the body to need other things that are far healthier for you. Because we know we get those endorphins, like you say. We know that the chemical makeup of our body improves or changes in a positive way if we feed it well, if we train it with care, and basically replacing that feeling of drinking with a better feeling through a new process. And yes, the temperature changes through cold plunges, hot and cold plunges, I'm a big fan of those as well. And, not only for all the medical benefits, but also because it creates that resilience in the body to resist.
Yes.
Right. So I'm assuming that's part of your routine as well.
Yeah. Part of my routine, I cold plunge every day. I'm a big believer in cold plunging. For a few reasons. And it's helped out. My wife does it now as well. We try and get the kids. Doesn't happen that often. You get in the cold, and all you want to do is jump out. That fight or flight kicks in. When you get into that cold plunge, you just hop right in. Just go. Just have a seat, go. It's going to be cold. What I have learned is it takes about 6 seconds for your brain to actually process that you're in the cold. You do it slowly, it gets colder. You hop right in. You're in before you realize it's cold. But then you're in and you want to get out, and you fight that urge to get out. That's your fight or flight that kicks in. And if you fight that urge to hop out, you sit in there and you breathe. I have found things that might trigger me in general, not for alcohol, but just trigger me where I might lose my temper or get into an argument with somebody. I take that breath. And because of how I've learned how to stay in that water, it's helped me to not react the way I used to react. I take that extra few seconds, very much like I do when I get in the cold plunge. I want to get out, get my breathing under control. Same thing happens. If I get into a situation where I feel that, fight coming up, that flight or fight, your heart rate increases, your body temperature increases, your breathing increases. Slow that down. It takes about 5-6 seconds. Then you're often better. So same thing when I do that with clients, where if they're feeling that urge to drink, get your breathing down. If you need to, I've told them flat out, quickly hop in a cold shower. That'll change everything, right? And that brings on things for anxiety as well. If you're feeling anxious, grab a handful of ice. Squeeze it. Stick it on the back of your neck, right? Or you want to really do it, grab some cold water, get a straw, sip it through, get a brain freeze. That takes every thought of what you were looking to do away.
That's fantastic. I am a big fan of cold plunges as well, and you're right. When you do it in a methodical way, the way that you approach the world changes because you have to, like you said, you have to breathe, you have to focus, you have to really get all your sensations under control to stay in that water. And then you get out and now you're no longer reacting to the world in the same way that you used to, right? So very similar with meditation, right? Are you a meditator as well?
Yes, I do. I have a protocol that I do every night where I work with all my clients, personal training clients and recovery clients. Um, the protocol, it starts about an hour before bed, where it's the only time I find to be your own time. That hour before bed, everyone's getting ready for bed. This is your time. And so what I suggest to people is start off, get your brush up, wash up, do what you got to do. Then from that point, start a clock for about an hour. At that hour mark, right after I brush and wash, I do a full brain dump. Everything I need to do for the next day is dumped onto a piece of paper. I write it all out. It's not a to-do list. It becomes a to-do list when I wake up in the morning. I don't do it in order, but everything you have to get through. So you're literally emptying your mind. Then from there, once the brain dump is done, I'll take my supplements. I take L-theanine, I take magnesium to help me sleep. Just again, the L-theanine helps me clear my mind a bit more. Then I will meditate. I don't meditate right before bed. I don't do it in bed. I want to really enjoy my meditation. So I'll do about a 10 to 15 minute guided meditation. Throw my AirPods in, sit in the corner of the room or wherever I am where nobody else is, dim the lights a bit. Not that it matters. My eyes are closed. And I meditate for about 10 to 15 minutes. And it's amazing. I'm convinced I've fallen asleep doing it, sitting upright, because I'm there's nothing there. I've dumped it. I'm not thinking about anything. And then from there, I've got about another half an hour left in my evening where I just will read. I'll just sit. It allows me to have one of the most uninterrupted, joyful sleeps where I'm out. So meditation is a huge part of that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I do it as well, and again, it's like the cold plunges is one of those things that it helps me not being reactive to the world. I can actually be in the world and not just be triggered by everything that is trying to trigger me, which inevitably happens every time you walk out the door. In fact, you don't even have to walk out. You just have to turn
the TV on. Yeah. There's so much out there. If we can not react, right? And we're always going to react in some way. Tensions in the world the last 6 months gotten worse and worse and worse, where there's always something, but we need to find a way to breathe it out, let it go. And again, it started by doing a meditation. I challenged myself to do a meditation. It was January 1st, 2021. I'm like, I'm going to meditate every day for a month and see how it goes. And that was a huge one for me. And for most people, because it's daunting. What do you mean? I got to chant. I got to come up with a mantra word. And I can tell you, I don't know if you do yours with a mantra word. And they say, find a word that has no meaning and can't be matched to another word. You give me any word and I will somehow find a way to match it to another thing. I don't care what word you give me. I am going to do like on Sesame Street where they kind of like get the two Latin words together and they bring them together for another word. That's me. So it's because I would try meditating and I would try getting that mantra word, and I'd be like, and I found ones that are meant for me, my age, my birthday, did all that. Every single one of them somehow manifested into often something triggering.
Interesting.
So now it's that's why I do that protocol of brushing your teeth, washing your face, doing your bed routine, doing that brain dump so that I don't have anything associated with the next day. So that hour is like no man's land. Nothing's penetrating because I've cut off from the day and I'm not part of tomorrow yet. This is just the extra hour of sleep we got on the weekend type of thing.
Oh, that's fantastic. I had a very similar experience with meditation. I tried many different types of meditation, and eventually I bumped into mindfulness meditation. And that's what I use now. But I also found out that as I as I found a way to make mindfulness meditation work for me, then I realized that other types of meditations that, at least in my mind, weren't working for me in the past, all of a sudden
Hmm.
became useful. Right. So it's, at the end of the day, it's just a matter of keep trying and not being in a state of expecting a result, but instead of just doing it every day for 5, 10, 15 minutes.
Right. And that's all you have to do. And if you look at anything, if we can build up how hard it's going to be, we can put up all the roadblocks. It's like when somebody, the resilience of somebody quitting drinking. What do you mean I can't have a drink for the rest of my life? How about we worry about just right now?
Yeah.
Right? Like, if I said to you, when's the last time you had warm milk to help you sleep? I had that all the time as a kid. I've never thought about it since then. But at the time, if you said to me when I was a kid, I couldn't have my warm cup of milk every night, I'd be like, oh my God, what do you mean? How am I going to sleep? But it was never a conversation. It was just, my parents just stopped giving it to me when I was a kid. It never came up again. But when we say, like, you can never do this, that whole you can never drink it, well, how will I live my life without that drink? I don't know. Most people do it without a problem, right?
Yeah.
The problem is we are a unique set of people. We really are. And I have yet to find somebody who is in recovery who has not gone on. It doesn't have to be massively world changing, but it's their world that's changed that they go on to do something even greater and better. I've never met somebody who doesn't have that story. We're unique in that way where we have to use this trigger, this tool to help us when we're triggered. When we don't have that tool, we're firing on all cylinders. Amazing things happen afterwards. Like it's unbelievable.
Oh, that is fantastic. And I am, as I get to know more this community, which I always was aware of it. And back in college, my college roommate had gone through recovery, but now, through Charlie, I've become more in touch with the community, and I see the similarities. I see the connectivity, which is the total opposite to the lack of connection that leads to the drinking. You guys,
Right.
you build a community, you welcome everyone. It's a beautiful thing to not only to see, but to be a part of. As someone who doesn't have that experience, you still feel the power of what you do for yourselves and for others. Let me go back to something you said real quick, because
Yeah.
you had you mentioned that you were going to therapy for about 10 years before you openly were sharing your story. And then from then
Yes.
on, the last 8, you've been sharing, not only sharing your story, but you've been actually certified as a coach and helping other people. But for you personally, how did your process, or I should say, did your process change on your day to day from before you were very open and public about your story to after you became public with your story?
So, yeah, when I was in the throes of my addiction, it was hidden, right? People knew I drank, and they knew I drank. Oh, look at Matt. He's got such tolerance. They didn't realize I'd been drinking all day long, right? Then I got recovery, and those 10 years, it was hard because I felt so much shame still, even though I knew there was no shame behind it. Right, we're going back 8 years ago, and there's still a stigma now, as you saw on the comments on my posts on social media. I felt the shame. I kept it hidden. It was another secret. It took its toll on me. It weighed on me. And then once I came out of that, I woke up. I wake up different. I wake up not as heavy. I wake up knowing what my purpose is. I had a purpose. I was a personal trainer. I was a father. I was a husband. But I felt in that period, those 10 years, I felt somewhat lost because I wasn't being my authentic self. My authentic self, whether I became a coach or not for recovery, whether all the things I've been doing in the last couple of years came to fruition, I do know that when I kept it to myself, I was doing myself a disservice. So when I started talking about it, I felt like I was me. And not everybody wants to talk about it. We still have clients now, they don't want to tell people. Fine. You don't have to tell people as long as you're not hiding it from people, right? You can say things like, well, look what I do for a living. I'm a personal trainer. The Sober Curious movement has helped out a lot with this to make it not as big a deal to not drink. But for me, I felt like I was not my true self, my authentic self. And then once I told my story, it made it, a weight was lifted off. It was like I had that. It was only, you ever have one of those weighted blankets on you?
Oh, yeah.
They feel good at first. And after a while, I feel like I'm trapped.
Yeah.
Not a fan of those blankets at all. They feel really snug at first. Oh, I feel so good. And then I'm like, wait, I can't move. Oh my God. Then anxiety builds. And that's how I felt when I was keeping it to myself. I didn't want, we're going out for dinner. Honey, can you cover for me? Then all of a sudden it becomes like, again, she's enabling me to protect me and protect yourself because, there's part of that. Even now, people will say, when I post something, she's been at a new company for the last couple of years. Then once I started posting it and we shared it on her social media once, all of a sudden, oh my God, I read his story. And then it threw her back into the throes of it, where it's my story and now she feels bad, which is the hard part for a lot of people because it was our kid who I almost endangered, right? But coming out of it on the other side of it, I feel lighter. I feel I feel like I am me, right? People associate me with being in fitness and being in recovery. I'll get messages on both sides and, speaking my voice about it. And I actually had one person say to me, you've been sober for 18 years. You're not really in recovery anymore. And I'm like, you need to understand, I am always going to be one drink away from a relapse, plain and simple. So yes, I'm always in recovery, and that's why I talk about it so much. And it's amazing because I'm so open about it, and I'll joke about it. My kids all know. We talk about it all the time. All of my sons, my son in university, all of his friends know, and we joke about it. We moved my son into his apartment with his roommates. It's his second year. Back in September, and they had a table there that had 3 legs. I was not aware that it had 3 legs. And I leaned on it, and the table fell. I'm like, whoa, Matt, are you okay? There's only 3 legs there. And a room full of these guys, these college guys who were all hungover. I'm like, oh, thank God. I thought I started drinking again all of a sudden. And they were dying of laughter because we make it so that we can talk about it. And they've even come to me saying, hey, I think so-and-so might be having a problem. Hey, well, this is what you got to look for. So it's great that, when you recover out loud, it also allows people who are struggling and recovering silently to know their support.
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. And I think that is right in line with at least, everything I've heard so far is that feeling of shame that, being quiet, not wanting people to know because of some sort of shame. And the moment you overcome that, it doesn't mean you have to become a certified coach. It doesn't mean that you have to do any of that stuff. It's just to be able to openly discuss the process of what led you to this point and the process you're following as you move forward. So I think that's wonderful. Matt, we are almost out of time, so I'd like to give you an opportunity here to leave the audience with something, and then also tell people where they can find your book and maybe your website or your tools. So if you want to tell people 3 things about addiction, what will you tell them?
3 things about addiction. The first one I'll tell you is it's not your fault, right? So people think, why me? Why me? Because we were lucky enough to be given the gene that likes it. It's not your fault, right? Most of the time we're trying to hide from or escape from some sort of a trauma, big or small, capital T, small t, whatever it is. we're escaping from that trauma. So number one, it's not your fault, and know that it's not your fault. Number two, there is so much support out there. You don't have to do it alone. If you feel that you need to do it alone, that you're in a situation where, for whatever reason, needs to be remain anonymous, or you just don't want to go through with it in public, follow along to the people like myself or Hillary's or listen to the podcast here. There are so many of us out there who can help guide you, even if you're doing it all by yourself. On that note, sidebar, reach out to one of us. It's still anonymous. No one of us will turn around and say, yes, we want to help you, but we want to plaster your name everywhere. We can help you online any way you want. And the last one, there's so much more on the other side of recovery. And I have a line of shirts that I had printed up where one of the lines is, recovery or sobriety gives you everything that addiction promised. And that's a huge one for me, because I have friends of mine who will say to me, Matt, every time we're together, I think we're all drinking because we have so much fun together. Right? Myself, the person I used to be, is still there. I'm comfortable enough with knowing that I can just be me. And I'll tell you, I don't have to be around people who are drinking. I don't have to be around people who are not drinking. I know why I don't, and that's good enough for me. So those are the three things I'd give you right there.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Matt. Where can people find you and your book and your tools?
So, number one, my website is wedorecover.life. That's my main site where I offer tools as well as coaching. I do all my coaching virtually, so over the phone, through Google Meets or Zoom. I can be anywhere. It's also the way I do my personal training. My book is right now on Amazon. It's through my name, Matthew Taub. The book is called Sober AF, Breaking Through, a Guide to Overcoming Alcohol Addiction. It's a really simple guide for tools. You can get it on Kindle, paperback or hardback. It's just a simple book. Every chapter starts off with a bit of my life and my situation in that moment to get to what the recovery process was. And I'm currently writing my second book, which is a lot of my story, and then the tools along behind it that are different tools, a little more involved tools. And then on social media, at Matthew Taub on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of it. My brand is my name. And reach out. I'm happy to help anybody, talk to anybody, support anybody. If I can't work with you, I can recommend people who can. It's that simple. We're a big community of people who just want to help out.
This has been wonderful, Matt. This has been educational for me. Thank you for making the time. It is a pleasure meeting you. I hope we can meet face-to-face someday and share more of these stories.
100%.
Thank you very much.